Any closing thoughts that you would like to leave with all of us?
Yes, actually, I'm going to pull out a card
There
for
you
you
go.
and for me. This is a mindfulness card, and these were created with a lot of love and heart, with three of us created, and to build mindful habits. Like I said, we may have the intention to be mindful, but it requires that repetition of creating and keeping a reminder with us. So we created an app for the phones, and I'm going to pull out a card for you and the viewers who are, and may this card be for the highest good of all of us. So I'm pulling it up. It's like stop and shuffle. It's shuffling right now.
Okay.
And oh my God, I love it. It's a compassion card that says,
I see me.
Me.
Yeah.
And so what this card is saying is, rather than trying to fix yourself, make time to meet yourself without an agenda.
Nice.
And then there's a little bit of a practice there, like take a conscious, nourishing breath, place a hand on your chest or your belly, like a good friend. Ask yourself, how am I really feeling? Listen deeply without trying to change anything. And then, like, when you do that, what needs tending to, what gifts want to be shared? So this is really a card for all of us as a reminder to take time to see yourself, to really, really meet yourself without any agenda, without trying to fix, but to really connect with yourself.
Nice. That's powerful. HEARTtalk is about heart-to-heart conversations on real issues that matter today. Issues of health, issues of wealth and well-being, and issues of spiritual living. And so everything about life today, we are faced with so much of in the world, which is in disruption, in chaos, in distortion, in fragmentation, you name it. And we are in the center of a storm that's happening around us. But the question is this, and I'm going to say this very clear in my opening statement. How do we become mindful when and where it matters most? That's the key for today. To make mindful decisions, mindful choices. Because, we are the product of our choices, not the byproduct of our responses. And that's key to life. And so today, I have a wonderful guest who's joining us. She is a world-renowned authority on one key issue which can unlock making the right choices in life, to be empowered to make decisions that matter most at the right time and in the right place. Now, my guest today is Dr. Shalini Bahl. She is a professor, mindfulness coach, and researcher. She's a keynote speaker, online trainer, and search inside yourself teacher and consultant of mindfulness-based solutions in education, business, and even in politics. Shalini thrives on her vision to build a global community for mindful living in business, leadership, and technology, so that we do not become overwhelmed by what is happening around us, but more focused on how to know your mind and what returning to the field within means to prevent becoming overwhelmed and burning out. So this is a key time. These are key issues and how to be mindful of our living so that we become productive and bear fruit in every place in the marketplace. So will you join me now and welcome my guest today, Professor Dr. Shalini Bahl live from Springfield, Massachusetts in the US of A. Welcome, Shalini.
Hello. So happy to be here with you in this heartful conversation.
It's been fantastic, and I want to welcome you. What's the situation like in Springfield?
It's fall. It's one of the most beautiful times of the year in New England area. So it's very colorful. It's a little chilly, and it's beautiful.
So I suspect that you've been dancing the whole evening.
I'm always dancing. In fact, I love the music that you had. You know, music and dance is such an important way in which we connect with ourselves, with our spirit, and express ourselves in the world. So whenever there's music, it really moves me. So it was really motivating after. So I'm like, yes, let's go. Let's do this.
Let's do this. You know, yeah, it's a rock and roll time. You know, Shalini, the world is in chaos. And we're living, you know, we haven't even come out fully from the pandemic. And yet we're moving into times of real challenges. You know, this part of the world in Asia, I think they're all walking blindfolded into a storm of debt. There's financial crisis. You know, right now in the United Kingdom, they're talking about crisis of living. You know, they're being watchful now for the next 6 months. You know, the society around us does nothing but pressure. And in this part of the world, post-pandemic, everybody is trying to survive and greed. It's survival and greed. In other words, trying to make up the losses during the 2 years of COVID. So there's loss of feeling of that even employees have no identity today. They're just being used to make up for the loss in whatever financial recovery is going on. So I believe that the key, which I did not know about at all, Shalini, 40 years of working life, 35 years as a plastic surgeon, I just lived my life on autopilot. And I know that the takeoff was manual and the landing was manual because we all have to get control of that part of life when we move. But tell me, as we go into this world of mindfulness, you're a mindfulness researcher, you're an expert, you're a teacher, you're a consultant now. How on earth did heaven put you into a place called mindfulness? Take us there.
Sure. So I'd like to present or talk about that in two ways. In one way, I feel I've always done and been practicing mindfulness without even knowing it, just like you have. Even in those 40 years where you didn't know about mindfulness, there were still moments, right, where you were present, where you were fully alive, inspired, connected with the deepest wisdom. So we all have those moments. And it's just that we're not aware and we don't know how to access those moments consciously. So in that sense, as a child, I would sit by the ocean. I was maybe 10, 11, as far as I remember. And I would just walk on my own. I was drawn by the ocean and I would sit there and I didn't know the word meditation at the time, but I think now that I think back, that's what I was doing. I would sit there just looking out at the horizon and I would find that very calming. That's it. And so that to me was, I feel, my earliest memories of being mindful and connected. And fast forward in times where I felt I was at the crossroads and I had to make important decisions. And I would then again ask these questions out there and I would receive answers. So that again was a way I was trusting that I have that wisdom within. And different people may call that wisdom different things: life, nature, God, you know, whatever it is we call that wisdom within. So I was already doing that, but more consciously, I learned how to access that mindfulness within myself through some challenges in life. I wouldn't say I walked into mindfulness, yes, I want to grow into my highest potential. That wasn't the case. I went through different challenges in life. I had been divorced. I'm from an Indian family, a very conservative family. And when I was divorced for the first time, it was, and moved to the States with my son. to start my life again, joined a PhD program. But that's when I had some opportunity to really reflect what happened, what went wrong. And so that self-reflection basically led me to the path of meditation and mindfulness, because I realized at some point the problems were not out there. They were really within me, in not having awareness of what I need, what I want. So that's kind of how I walked into mindfulness, was my own suffering in my life. And the more I learned about it, I'm like, wow, I had no idea, just like you shared, that the first 40 years of my life, I was living on autopilot, based on what I had learned from my parents, from school, from media. This is what it means to be a good person, a good daughter, a good wife.
Right.
And I was following all those rules. I was a really, really good student. I was a really good daughter and doing all the things right. And yet here I was alone in the world with my son, of course, but alone and not knowing what went wrong. So that was basically the start of my journey.
So now you've crossed over. We always talk about crossing over experiences in life. And now that you're on the other side of the shore, and the waves are different, the sunset's different. Now, how would you advise, or what's your take on anyone? They don't have to go through valley experiences. They don't have to go through divorces. They don't have to go through struggles, because they can actually prime themselves up now with the knowledge that we have on mindfulness to be able to, kind of like future escape whatever challenges that are coming up in front of us. I mean, will that be the right way of mindfulness today? How would you position this speciality of mindfulness today? Because it's a tool that you have learned. Nobody has to go through struggles and then find out there is a tool. It's like you have a screwdriver and all you need is a screw to screw it in. So how would you approach it as a researcher now in your own life to somebody who is budding off? In other words, it's a fantastic, I'm telling you, I've never heard of mindfulness 2 years ago. But today I'm the founder of the Asia Pacific consultation because I found out where on earth was my mind all this while.
Yeah.
So take us there. Somebody listening in say, I don't have to go through a valley experience like everybody else. I can prime myself up now.
Right.
Yeah. So
I think the first thing I would say, though, is that as long as we're alive, there are going to be valleys.
Right.
We're going to fall sick. We're going to lose a job, maybe we won't, or we may not get the job we want. We may not get the partner we want. So there are going to be those valleys, right? So the first aspect of mindfulness is just that understanding the life is going to have those valleys and peaks. And however, we don't have to stay stuck there in the valley. We don't have to suffer in the valley. We can use that valley as a way of returning back to our place of rest, awareness, connection, and see what is this situation. Either it's teaching us something or it's asking us to respond in a way. And we can do that responding in a way that's most skillful. So that's where the mindfulness training comes. And you don't want to wait to be in the valley because you won't have the resources at that time to deal with the valley and learn a new skill set. Right. So which is why it's great to cultivate the skill set, to train the mind already to sort of dance even while we're in the valley and to kind of deal with it, to respond with it in a more skillful way.
When we talk about returning to the feel within, how does one recognize that we've actually left the feel within? Because when you come to the senses of returning, obviously it's like leaving home. Because coming back to a place called home is where you find your rest and you're at peace with yourself. So how does one know that I've left my home? Is it when chaos starts coming in, when everything's upside down and say, where am I? That kind of thing, help, I need somebody,
Well, it definitely, that extreme state of help is a sign we've moved away from home. But I think it's just the subtlest of things. And the more awareness we build, we can recognize it. Like in this moment, as we're sitting here, what is the quality of my body? Am I tensing? And even if anyone's watching this, you can check in with your body and see, like, are you like rigid right now, or are you just relaxed, right? What is the quality of your breath? Because generally when we're tensed, or we are either tense or rushing, because that's the other thing that takes us away from the present moment, is where we're anticipating and we're like, oh my God, I gotta go, go, go. And in those moments of constriction, of rushing, reacting, we can recognize that through connection with our body. The body never lies. So on the other hand, when we are relaxed and we are present, we are breathing in a natural way. The abdomen, the stomach, the chest, shoulders, they're all kind of relaxed, right? So that's the simplest way to know whether you are present or not. Mm-hmm. And then once you find that there is rigidity, then what do? Sometimes just bringing awareness that I'm holding tension here, just that awareness can allow us to choose to relax. But sometimes there is a thought or an emotion that's causing that tension, right? Like right in this moment, if I'm anticipating, oh, am I giving the right answers? Am I able to impress Dr. Lee right now? So if I have those kind of thoughts, my heart will be beating faster. And so it's that thought. And it's not a very helpful thought, because what is helpful in that situation, once we see what is the emotion or the thoughts that are causing this anxiety or stress, then we have a chance to transform that. And the way to transform that emotion or anxiety is not by suppressing or just breathing it away, but it's through, again, returning to our intention. So my intention right now is not to impress you or the viewers. My intention is to have this real heartful connection and to make space for all of us for some magic to happen, or make space. Make space. Like if I come in with a very, like I need to let people know this, then it doesn't have space for what could emerge when we just show up authentically in a conversation like this.
Nice. I mean, that's powerful. When we talk about choices and responses, I think you're familiar with this saying that I never heard it before, but when I heard it, I wrote it down and it became part of me when I was launching the first Asia Pacific conference. And now I find that everybody seems to be knowing it. And that's the statement by Viktor Frankl. Remember where he says between a response and a stimulus is the space. You call that space the field within. And in that space is the power for us to make choices. And so I always say this, Shalini, that we are a product of our choices, not a byproduct of our responses. It's something that I've been saying over for a while now. But the fascinating thing, I heard you make this statement, and it really blew my mind when you said 95% of decisions we make are in the unconscious mind. In other words, I stopped and I replayed, and I stopped and I replayed. And I said, is this real? Talk to us about that part, because I think that's critical, isn't it? To come out, because that means only 5% are conscious decisions that we make. And that's frightening.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's up to 95% of our daily decisions are being made unconsciously, which means it's unintentional. We're not intentional about it. It means we don't have any control because we're not even aware that we're making those decisions and why. Mm-hmm. And what are the motivations? So when we say we're making decisions unconsciously, we're not aware. Like I may be aware that I'm getting married to this person, but I'm not aware of what are the motivations that are leading up to that choice. Yeah. So these there was a whole stream of research that was done in the starting in 1990s or 80s, with uh, Dr. Barg and Chatterand and all of these people who did these experiments where they found that, in very simple tasks that people did, it depleted their brain resources. So what they discovered basically is that as humans, we have this limited amount of brain resources that we use for planning, thinking, remembering, strategizing, willpower. I should do this, I shouldn't do this. All of these decisions are taking up some of those resources. And which is why the brain tries to automate everything so that we don't have to draw upon those resources and we can conserve those for critical situations.
Right, right.
So there's a reason for why the brain is doing that. It's not all bad that we're automating, because we don't want to learn how to drive a car all over again. Brain wants to automate. Once you've got it, you can eat, you can listen to music. You don't want to text while you're driving, but you can do more things. But initially when you're driving, that's all you can do is like just focus on the driving. Right. But then the brain automates it. So it's a good thing that we're able to automate, except the problem is that the brain automates everything, including our conversations with loved ones, like, hey, honey, how are you doing? Great. Oh, or it was awful. Like we have these conversations where, it's like, how are you doing? Great. I mean, did you really mean, how are you doing? And the person who said great, are they really feeling great? What does great even mean in that moment?
Right.
So much of conversations are happening, but then you go into parenting and that's happening on autopilot. You're not really present for our children, right? And especially with technology now, I see parents all the time on phones, and that's what you're teaching then your kids to do, is to not be present. Then you look at workplaces where, we again making decisions based on what we have learned, what we see around it, but the world is changing and we're making decisions based on what we learned 20 years or 30 years ago. So we have to be able to have that choice when to go on autopilot that's efficient and when to let go of autopilot and make room for new perspectives, new possibilities. And
making the right choices at the right moment, because if we cannot manage our emotions and be mindful of who we are, there's no point talking about existence and about the planetary health and all that kind of stuff when we are just incorrigible people as a people. Because this mindfulness is a big place in community health, personal health. It's a huge thing that it's like a minefield actually. And if you don't step on the wrong mine, you get blown up. Because I find that unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, Shalini, there's so much of this beautiful tool called mindfulness being diverted towards problems of stress and depression and anxiety and all that, when we actually can be mindful living as human beings and enjoying the capacity within us to feed from the wealth of that interest that's inside of us. We are all beautiful people. We were made as beautiful human beings. So you talk so much about living in the being in the present. So talk to me and talk to all of us about keeping mindfulness continually in flames. You know what I mean? That you're feeding on this tool, or not, it's such a beautiful gift that God has given us.
Absolutely. Yes. No, I think this really speaks to my heart. And I was trained in Dr. John Kabat-Zinn's workshops, and it was several years of training, very deep training, and the program was called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction.
Right.
And that was like a wonderful, wonderful program that came out from the UMass Medical School. And again, it was in the field of health and people with chronic pain and stress. And so it was perfect for that environment, right? How can people deal with the stress and transform that into living a meaningful life in the middle of stress and all of that. And that was a great start for bringing secular mindfulness into healthcare in a very research-oriented, scientific, evidence-based world. However, I think moving forward, though, we now have an opportunity to not just use mindfulness for stress management and depression and anxiety. And unfortunately, that's what gets most people into a mindfulness workshop, is because they're suffering. I mean, that's how I walked into it, right? So, but I really appreciate this question, and I appreciate us now pivoting to using and returning to mindfulness, not just for stress, but for really connecting with our deepest potential, for really connecting with what is this gift of this life that I've been given? How can I live it in a way that it really fulfills me and it fulfills my role in this community? So it's not just about fulfilling me, but we have this symbiotic relationship with people that we live with in our community, with the environment. And so it's really taking that moment, taking those moments to connect with ourselves. What is my deepest yearning? And that is something I learned also along the way, like coming from an Indian culture in my generation, where so much of our focus was on taking care of other people's needs, which is great. You know, I'm naturally a very empathetic person, but it didn't serve me well because I wasn't paying attention to what are my gifts.
Right.
And what was I born to enjoy and share with the world? And that's one of the things I tell people now, is that the biggest gift you can give to people you love is to celebrate your own gifts and wisdom. So that's the part, I think, that I really want to encourage people, is to really use this capacity that we have. This is not something that we really need to be trained in, because we do have an innate capacity to return back to that place within us that feels like home, that feels spacious, that feels creative, just like as we were when we were children, right? We asked gazillion questions. We had that spark in our eyes where it's like, oh my God, what is that? What is that? You know? And as we grow up, the curiosity, that sense of wonder and awe, that is the spark for creativity. That is the spark for connection, right? And as we grow older, that dulls down, because we're told in school, no, don't ask that question, good question, bad question. Even in now, you know, like, I'm in politics, I'm one of the local leaders here. And I find that this happens all the time when we are dealing, especially with very difficult questions in our council. And if anyone asks a question that is different from anyone else, or, you know, they are struggling and it's like, I don't get it, or can I ask for a day's extension? And everyone will judge them automatically. Like, how could you say that? Instead of bringing curiosity, like, what is going on for you? What made you say that? Or, you know, what do you need? We immediately go into judgments. Instead of curiosity.
Where does mindfulness come in, even in your own life? How do you really talk to yourself and listen to the voice within?
Yes. You know, I also feel very often that we can't think our way through problems, because if we could, we would. There are certain times where thinking can help us, you know, solve the problem. However, if you find yourself stuck in a thinking loop, you know, we're just repeating the same thoughts, the way to disrupt that is not by thinking more about it, right? So the way to disrupt that is by returning to the body. So using your breath, like just breathing, connecting with the sensations of breathing in the body, connecting with your body, the rising and the falling of the breath in your abdomen and your chest, or so just something that really connects you with your experience of the body is a way to disconnect from that thinking loop. Because your body, your breath, you're breathing in this moment. You're not breathing in the past or future, you're breathing right now. Just by connecting with your breath, with your body, allows you to return to this present moment. So that's the first step. And then once I feel connected with my body, then I can see, oh, wait, my body is really tight here. Now, creativity does not happen in a constricted mind, right? So when we're tense, when we're reactive, like, how could that person say that? I need to figure this out. When you go in with that kind of tension, like, I need to figure this out. It's a closed fist. You can't, there's no space for anything here. But as soon as you return to the body, you notice the constriction, then you have a choice to open, to relax. And then we can align the mind towards what is most important. So generally, I will ask myself, okay, what are my intentions for the situation? Because the mind wants to go into, how could they say that? How did they do that? I want to fix it. I want to fight that. I want to defend.
Right.
But what is my intention? Is my intention to fight them? Is my intention to prove I'm right, they're wrong? Or is my intention to bring healing? Is my intention to improve the state of well-being of, so whatever my intentions are, that helps me to realign my inner compass.
Wow.
Because I'm in a certain direction, but now I can realign. What's important here is the healing, is the people. And then from there, okay, if that's the intention, now I have space, what's possible? You can then go into that exploration, that curiosity, who can I bring in? What can I do? There's more space. And sometimes, like there is this Austrian poet, Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke, and he says, love the unsolved questions in your heart.
Right.
So that, right? Because we have that habit of wanting instant solutions. We want to fix this.
Yeah.
But sometimes we need to live with that question for a while without forcing the answer.
Wow.
So inviting that and loving the unsolved questions in our hearts. And then slowly it's that intention and that holding and the patience that will lead us to the right people, to the right resources, to then, move in that right direction.
Oh, that's a deep chapter that you have just opened up. And talking about intentionality, there's a lot about intentional thinking when it comes to mindfulness. How different is that from attentional, with an A in it, attention, paying attention? So you got their intent right. I'm intentionally kind of do this. And how do you pay attention? What's the difference between intentional thinking and attentional thinking? They are both playing in this whole world of mindfulness. The question is how do you make,
We need both, right? Because attention is like having the discernment of what to focus on. What are we paying attention to? What are we focusing on? And that is really important. And along with that, I could be giving my full attention to this video game when really what is needed is to pay attention to my studies. So what we're paying attention, like being able to pay attention is important, but it's also what are you paying attention to at the right time? So that's where the intentionality comes.
Right.
What is the highest good of all involved? That's a question I always keep in mind, is what is for the highest good of the audience? What is for the highest good of all beings? when I am saying something, my speech, and even my thoughts. Not even, because even thoughts have energy, right? Or they are directing, they're going to impact how I end up behaving at some point. So the
Right.
quality of my thoughts, my speech, my actions, they all are they aligned with my intentions?
Right, right. Okay. So that's, I mean, can anybody learn the skill of mindfulness? Is it a,
Absolutely.
right,
Absolutely. I have worked with, I think, the youngest people. I mean, I've seen videos of mindful schools where they're bringing it into kindergarten. However, I personally have not worked with young people, um, but when my son was about 6 or 7, and he would, run into a difficulty and he'd say, Mom, what do I do here? And I'm like, okay, you tell me. And I taught him at a very young age that, when you are troubled, your mind is going to be reactive, will not make a good decision. However, you have the capacity to make good decisions if you can breathe and calm your mind down. So
right,
he learned when he was 6 or 7 to breathe, calm his mind down. And then I would tell him, okay, now ask your deepest wisdom. What is the right thing? Once he's calmed down, what is the right thing to do? And he would inevitably come up with a solution which would blow my mind. I'm like obviously, I mean, it would blow my mind, but I would be like, of course. And and the same thing, and it's not that he was an exceptional child or anything. It's just that anyone who does that, when we go into a situation with that trust, that if I can just stop this reaction by calming myself down, and in the brain, what's happening really is we are wired for survival. So when there is a threat to our sense of self, competence, goodness, belonging, whenever there's a threat, we automatically go into our conditioned behavior to either get aggressive and fight, or we go into the flight mode where I'll just like avoid and walk away from it, but we haven't dealt with the situation, right?
very cool.
So that is our automatic reaction. However, that's our sympathetic nervous system that's kicked
Yes,
in through breathing, which has been shown that you're sending a message to the body that it's okay, there is no tiger. We're responding as if there is a tiger,
right,
but there is no tiger. What helped us when we lived in the jungles was to fight, flight, or maybe freeze. But that same mechanism is not helpful in the boardroom or in politics, because we don't need to fight, flight, free. What we do need is to acknowledge, okay, there is a problem here. And can I breathe? Through the breathing, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. So we are now more in equilibrium. And then we can re-engage with that situation in a calm, creative way.
Listen, while you're talking, it's so therapeutic that, because you make every response that we are doing in our lives so meaningful, because you're looking at it from a very mindful lens. And I think that's the gift of life, isn't it? To be able to look at all the responses we do in a mindful
Yes.
way, and
Yeah.
then the beauty part of our lives comes out. You see, because then it's fantastic. I saw a girl last week. She's 20 years old, and I operated on her 20 years ago when she was like 4 months old. She had a cleft lip. And to come back and see her plastic surgeon when she was 4 months, and for me it was like breathtaking to see a 20-year-old beautiful woman walk into my clinic, and I've got her on my LinkedIn post. And it is those moments, right, where she had tears and tears because she was searching for me to find out where this, and all I could get was tears of gratitude. And those are moments that nothing can replace, because they are mindful moments. And I want to ask you, as we come to the close of our session together, it's such a beautiful conversation with you, Shalini. Can spend the whole day with you and be mindful of it. How do you see this beautiful gift that you have now embraced and made it your passion to build, use it as a skill into the marketplace? How do you see this skill going forward? In our own lives, in corporate world, in the professionals. How do you see this skill going? Where do you like it to be? And I'm asking you this with the backdrop of a scientist called Robert Boyle, whom I always quote whenever I close a scientific session with yourself. Robert Boyle was the father of chemistry in England. And this is like 350 years ago. And he wrote a 20-point wish list, 20 points of what science he hoped would do. We all studied Boyle's apparatus, Boyle's law in school, right? Science. Number one,
Right.
the number one on his wish list was the prolongation of life. And number two was the recovery of youthfulness. And I think the science over the last 350 years now, we are living longer. People are paying attention to brain life instead of brain health. It's all about prolonging life, heart life, brain life, mind life. And I think that this is just the tip of an iceberg, and we need teachers and researchers like yourself to bring this gift into the world. And so talk to us as we close. Where do you see this going out into the world in the marketplace? How do you see this moving forward?
Well, you asked specifically for the marketplace, but my wish list is number one on my wish list is that it comes to schools so that young people, like if you and I had learned as kids how to be more aware of emotions, and emotions are not something to be pushed away and suppressed, rather they are meant to be befriended because they are there to inform us to make better decisions. We would have probably made much better choices. And given the conflicts and the divisiveness in, locally, nationally, globally that's happening, if we could all learn that we all have the same minds, you and I, if you were born in the same circumstances, you would end up doing the same things that I'm doing. And so if you could just see that, we would not create these differences, the othering we do, like you're in that outsider group, I'm in the inside group, and inside outside, and all these conflicts would not happen. Rather, we would be using our amazing brains, which can do remarkable things. They would be directed towards finding solutions for hunger, for climate change, for living more fulfilling lives, and creating music and dance, and we wouldn't spend those resources in fighting ourselves. And then speaking specifically to the marketplace, because I have a PhD in marketing, and my interest, and my husband also is a marketing professor, and both of us are right now working on a book called The Stress-Free PhD.
Wow.
So one thing we want to do is, bring that for academics and so forth. But I think what we're really ultimately interested is how can mindfulness be used in marketing, which some people think is an oxymoron, because the current paradigm is based on maximizing their profits based on getting people addicted to the products like Facebook, or the model based on you getting addicted to it. So how can mindfulness be used at the level of leadership, because they set the tone and the culture, and for them to be able to again use mindfulness to see the interconnectedness of all stakeholders. So they may, when they are causing harm through creating addictions, they may increase their profits in the short run. But over time, people are going to realize, and it's going to come back, and it's not going to build loyalty. It's a long-term perspective. So really the marketing field, I think professionals need to learn these skills of disrupting their own learning and education that was based on maximizing shareholder value, which does not work in the current world where our kids are growing up with way more interconnectedness because of technology and more awareness
Yes.
of, and so that old paradigm is not going to work. And so I think mindfulness can really help us to disrupt our old ways of thinking and make space, make room for more creative thinking that benefits everyone. And there is research to show that when marketers do that, there was a 10-year long longitudinal study that showed conscious businesses outperformed the S&P 500 companies by a ratio of 7-1.
Right.
So, so it's not that you're doing this. I mean, I would hope you would just do it because it's good and we're interconnected, but it's also good for the bottom line.
Oh, wow. That's powerful. And good luck and best wishes for that book. I think it's timely that it comes out into the world. And, but, if I had to put the switch on to start this process of mindfulness as we close, I think the take home here is to be able to use this skill is to disrupt our default thinking.
Yes.
Once we disconnect that default thinking, which is on autopilot, then it creates this whole return to awareness, and you become conscious of where we are, and that builds resilience to allow us to make empowered choices so that we live as a collective fulfillment in this fulfilled life. I wrote these cascading movements from you. It's your words, and I love you for that. And any closing thoughts that you would like to leave with all of us?
Yes, actually, I'm going to pull out a card
There
for
you go.
you and for me. This is a mindfulness card, and these were created with a lot of love and heart, with 3 of us created, and to build mindful habits. Like I said, we may have the intention to be mindful, but it requires that repetition of creating and keeping a reminder with us. So we created an app for the phones, and I'm going to pull out a card for you and the viewers and may this card be for the highest good of all of us. So I'm pulling it up. It's like stop and shuffle. It's shuffling right now.
Okay.
And oh my God, I love it. It's a compassion card that says,
I see
me.
Yeah.
And so what this card is saying is, rather than trying to fix yourself, make time to meet yourself without an agenda.
Nice.
And then there's a little bit of a practice there, like take a conscious, nourishing breath, place a hand on your chest or your belly. Like a good friend, ask yourself, how am I really feeling? Listen deeply without trying to change anything. And then, like, when you do that, what needs tending to, what gifts want to be shared? So this is really a card for all of us as a reminder to take time to see yourself, to really, really meet yourself without any agenda, without trying to fix, but to really connect with yourself.
Nice. That's powerful. Oh, I love you for that. Thank you. And it's so apt too, because let me close with something very personal, because that gives me a totally different platform for today to live it out. And it's morning here, and I was being wheeled to the operating theater about 11 years ago to have open heart surgery. And so if I knew mindfulness, I would have spared myself a scar on my chest, because I would have learned how to manage stress and how to tone my anger. You're operating and you're all the time busy and all that. So I was dying on the inside. But, as a man of faith, because I live through the lens of faith, and I see me is what I was first told by a consultant psychologist after my heart surgery. And she said 3 words. She said, be kind to yourself. Okay, 4 words. Until now, I just don't know how to be kind to myself. But I tell you, as they were wheeling me on the trolley to the operating theater, for 2 weeks, I was fighting with my God, because I wanted an answer whether I would survive, because I know 5% I would have died on the table. So I was, really struggling into the heavenly realms kind of thing, Shalini. And finally, as they were wheeling me, no answer, no sign, nothing from this, God of mine. And just as I was turning into the operating theater, they're wheeling me, I looked up and I saw these signs. ICU. It was intensive care unit.
Wow.
It is a place that I go so often when my patients are in there. Intensive care unit. In short, we always say, I'm going to the ICU, without knowing what it is. But for me, it was, God seeing me. I see you. And there you go. So, so I caught that. And I went in and I said, okay, go ahead, open me up, So on that note, I see me and God sees you and me. I want to end with this. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing or right doing, there is a field. Let's meet us there, says Professor Dr. Shalini Bahl. So on that note, we'll meet again. We'll talk again soon. And thank you so much for this closing 1 hour of mindfulness. And it's a topic that we can go on talking in always because of connectiveness. And we are so connected in our hearts to one another. Yeah. So all the best. Thank you so much, Lovey, for what you have shared with us. And we hope we have not seen the end of us yet, but we'll definitely have you again and for all those. So thank you once again, Shalini. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. To be continued.
To be continued. And so, friends, thank you for joining us on HEARTtalk. Just to remind you to keep these dates available in December, we're going to have Dr. Shalini Bahl back again as one of our plenary speakers for the Mind Manifest Plenary Lecture Series. And so stay a date with us, stay tuned with us, and together we'll be much more mindful people in this minefield of a world so that we make the right choices at the right time. So from all of us here, from Mary, the producer, and Heidi, our co-producers, we want to thank you for this time. And once again, thank you, Professor Dr. Shalini Bahl. And once again, we'll talk soon. Bye for now.